Hello, my name is Sophie and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would actually be on top of all these Q1 videos that people will be making and make one of my own. And by on top, I mean I filmed this on April the 9th and then, stuff happened. So I'm only uploading it now, but at least I tried to be on time, even if I didn't execute it very well. Last year I saw loads of people making Q1 content, which is the first quarter of the year. So once the first 3 months of the year have passed, that is Q1 for anyone who didn't know. Last year I saw loads of other people making the content, but by the time I got around to making my own content, another month had passed. So I tried to make the first third of the year a thing, and obviously that didn't work and didn't take off in any way whatsoever. So this year I was much more aware and ready for Q1. So I thought what we'd do today is have a look at my story graph, look at my stats from the first 3 months of the year. I've already got myself confused because I know how many books I've read total, and because we're only 9 days into April, I'm like, yeah, Q1. And I'm like, no, you finished books since the end of March and they don't count in Q1. But that's my tiny brain talking. I've picked a top 3 and a bottom 3 of the books I've read, not including rereads, but we'll get to that. And anything else I can think of, essentially, to reflect on the first quarter of reading. Just off the bat, I think in January I read 5 books. I was very pleased with that. In February I managed to read 10 and I actually finished my monthly TBR and I was incredibly proud of myself. And then arguably I got a bit cocky because in March we got a cat. So literally on the 1st of March we got a cat. So that was a huge lifestyle change. I've never had a pet really before, and she has had a really good impact on my sleep schedule, which has had a negative impact on how much I've been reading. So in March, I only managed to finish reading 3 books, but I've already surpassed that in April. So, you win some, you lose some. The book buying has happened. We'll get to that. I'll go through some of my other spreadsheets as well. The fact that there's plural spreadsheets. There we go. So this is my story graph. I've put the reading stats to custom from 1st of Jan to 31st of March. Reading stats. Then we get into the fun stuff. 18 books read, which according to Storygraph equates to 4,321 pages and 125.68 hours, except I quite often co-read, so either with a physical book or an ebook and an audiobook at the same time. And personally, I track that as both because I am reading those pages and listening to those minutes. So I feel like it's fair to contribute them to both statistics, but that doesn't mean I count the book as being read twice. Have your opinions on that. That's how I do it. But obviously on Storygraph, I can only track it in one way. That, and sometimes the number of pages in my edition of a book don't specifically add up to the number of pages on the Storygraph edition of the book. That's roughly how much I've been reading. Average time to finish a book, 8 days. That sounds about right. I do tend to have 2 books on the go at once because I'm quite happy reading in 2 formats. So I will read a physical book and an audiobook unless I'm co-reading. There's lots of caveats, but generally I do read 2 books at the same time and I can roughly read 1 in each format per week. So 8 days is about right. Moods. This one, I'm not sure if it's based on my reviews of the books or Storygraph's information. I don't know, I can't think of the word. But apparently my most read moods are emotional, adventurous, and funny. Only 2 sad books. What have we got? 1 challenging book, 1 informative book, 2 reflective books, 3 dark books, 3 mysterious books, 5 light-hearted books, that sounds about right, and 5 tense books. Light-hearted and tense are very opposite emotions to be next to each other, but fine. Then onto pace, we have, again, I don't know if this is based on the information I put into Storygraph or their information, but according to Storygraph, we have 4 fast-paced books, but predominantly medium-paced books at 14. Then page number, again, with the caveat that not all of the books I read were tracked as physical books with pages. Less than 300 pages, we have 3 books. Which 3 are those? Oh yeah, The Perks of Being a Wallflower is short. I read the Powerless novella and the Number One Ladies Detective Agency. Okay, fair enough. And then 8 long books. I should probably have some insights on some of these statistics, but I really don't. So, yeah, I read 73% average length books. Audiobook length, we have one that was less than 8 hours. I think that was... No, I don't know what that was. Oh, Our Man in Havana. But that was still 7 hours, 5 minutes. Then, again, what I would call a normal length audiobook, we have 2. And then 4 long audiobooks. One of which was definitely Oathbound. Oh yeah, Fourth Wing, Onyx Storm, Iron Flame. Don't know why it's put those in that order, because I didn't read them in that order. And then Oathbound, because I reread all of the Empyrean series before Onyx Storm came out. Then fiction, non-fiction. I have already read one non-fiction book this year, and I'm very proud of myself for it. Not proud of what it was, though, because it was one of the books from the wedding library, and even though I could have, on principle, not read it, I still would have the book in my house. So it would feel weird to have gone through the entire wedding library and not read one book on principle. So the one non-fiction book I read was by Boris Johnson, who is a terrible British politician. And the whole book was an interesting read, but also an interesting test of my own capability to recognise and question the integrity of the sources I'm reading. So the whole time I was listening to his writing about Winston Churchill, the book was The Churchill Factor, I was very aware of how a lot of his language, whilst kind of an attempt at being unbiased, was there. A lot of it was very biased with his own opinion, and I genuinely had to remind myself that I was reading a book or listening to a book about Winston Churchill and not Boris Johnson. So yeah, that was a weird one. I have a few non-fiction books on my radar, so hopefully that will not be the only non-fiction book I read this year. But then obviously 94% of what I've been reading is fiction. Genres, I feel like I have been on a massive fantasy kick this year, because I've had 10 fantasy books, 7 of which have been young adult, and generally I consider myself to not read a lot of young adult, but what I mean by that is I don't read a lot of new young adult, because the young adult that's generally being released now, if it's not fantasy, is aimed at a generation that is completely different to my experience of being a young adult. So I don't engage with it in the same way as I did when I was one. But I have been doing a lot of rereads this year. So the young adult books I'm reading are the ones from my own childhood, which is why this number is so high. 6 contemporary books, though I didn't think that was that high. Perks Being a Wallflower is set in the 90s, so this is where contemporary confuses me, because Perks Being a Wallflower is set in the 90s, so I wouldn't call that a contemporary book. At what point does a book... I do often wonder where the line is between contemporary not being acknowledged and historical. At what point? Is Daisy Jones and the Six historical because it's set in the 70s? My mum would be really upset to hear that. If anyone has any information on that, let me know. Fangirl, Deep End, HMRC, Spiral, Love Life Farms. Yeah, I suppose I have read all of those contemporary books. Then we get onto the format, which again is a little bit skewed because I can only track one format per book on Storygraph, where I don't always only use one format. So according to Storygraph, I've read 2 books digitally, 7 audiobooks, and 9 print books, whether that be paperback or hardback. And that seems like a pretty decent split. I love reading on my Kindle, but where I have so many books on my physical TBR, I just can't justify using it without buying another edition of the book I already own, and I don't want to invest in another edition just for the sake of being able to read on my Kindle. Most read authors, we have Rebecca Yarros, obviously, because I reread Fourth Wing and Iron Flame before Onyx Storm came out, so those are the 3 Rebecca Yarros. And then James Patterson is the author of the Maximum Ride books that I've been rereading, and I've reread book 1 and book 2. Book 3 is on my radar, but it's currently on my, if I finish my monthly TBR, I'm going to be reading this book. And last but not least, on Storygraph, my star ratings. Out of the 17 reviews I've done of the 18 books, because I refused to rate Churchill Factor because I had such mixed feelings about it. But out of the other 17 reviews I did leave, my average rating is 3.97, which I think is pretty good. around between 3.5 and 4 is kind of my happy place. If it was any lower than 3.5, I'd be like disappointed, but I'm very happy with that. My most given rating for the year is 5-star. I think a lot of that is because I have been rereading a lot of books, and I've been rereading a lot of my favourite books from my childhood, so most of those I think will be rereads. Yeah, Maximum Ride was 5 stars, Perks of Being a Wallflower was still 5 stars, Fangirl was still 5 stars, Her Majesty's Royal Coven is my only new 5-star this year. That's an interesting statistic that I didn't know until just now. I loved Her Majesty's Royal Coven. I thought it was so much fun, especially for a contemporary fantasy. I think a lot of contemporary fantasies can fall into this kind of urban category of trying to be cool. And I think the thing with Her Majesty's Royal Coven is that because it's about women in their 40s, slightly older protagonist characters, they didn't care about being cool, and they were brilliant. I've got the second book to read at some point, and then the third book comes out in the summer, so hoping to carry on with that series this year. That's all my Storygraph statistics. My spreadsheet is quite convoluted and doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, but starting with the first sheet, we have my unread physical TBR. Have I been adding new books to this? I don't know if I have, but it's a list of most, if not all, of my unread TBR. And then when I finish a book, I delete it from the list and then add it to these statistics. So we have my total unread from Jan 1st, which obviously stays the same. Then the unread, I don't know why I've put physical. Oh yeah, I've put physical here because I don't count my ebooks as part of my TBR. So I also have sections for the total number of unread physical books I've bought in 2025, because there's some books I buy as trophies, so I've already read them. So even though I bought them and they contribute to my how many books I've bought list, they don't contribute to adding to my TBR. Then total unread gifted. The word gifted feels very fake here because it refers to books that I haven't paid for. So generally it's books that either my husband or my mum have bought for me. Then we have total physical reads, total TBR read. So there's some physical reads that I don't really know why those are separate, because if they're new books, they're still part of my TBR. But either way, whatever. And then that's my total read. Any books that I've unhauled or DNF'd, basically I've put all of those numbers in so that this number is my accurate remaining backlog. Currently on 442, which isn't the end of my first quarter stat, but I can't remember. I think I was on 445, which is only 6 more than when I started in the beginning of the year. So considering how bad my book buying habit is, 6 isn't too bad. It's single digits, and I'll take it. From there, we have my book buying tracker, where I have the title, the author, the date I purchased it, the amount I spent, where I bought it from, whether it added to my TBR, whether it was gifted, whether I'd already read it. So as you can see, there's a few books I had already read, so those are trophy books, and then whether I've read them since. So as you can see here, I hadn't read this book. I hadn't read Onyx Storm when I bought it, obviously, but I have since read it. So those are worth keeping separate. And then the total acquired in 2025 is currently 40. Again, I don't think this is too bad, but it's not great either. I have been buying a lot of trophy books this year, but yeah, then these reflect the statistics that are on my unread TBR page: unread new buys, unread gifted, total read new buys, and then the percentage of my new buys that I have read, which is 30%, which isn't terrible. And the total spent, but we're not going to talk about that. Then I did get confused about my TBR number. So what I've done is I've just got like a log where I've got what I read, whether it takes my TBR up or down, and the then total number. This is unnecessary, but just makes my brain feel better about the fact that I've got my TBR number right. Then we have my actual reading tracker of the books that I've read this year. Pre-order tracker. Monthly TBRs. This year I'm tracking. I want to keep track of all of my TBRs. And then I have a code at the top. So January and March, obviously I started but didn't finish my TBR. February I did finish my TBR, so that one's in green. The light green is books that I've read in the relevant month. The dark green is when I finished it in the following month. Grey is books that I didn't get around to reading, and then red is my DNF. So I'm currently reading Reckless, so that's in yellow, and then these are the books I haven't got to yet. Then we have a list of my 25 and 2025 with a tick box for when I've got round to them. Those are the 5 that I have at least attempted to read this year. Then we have my series tracker, which doesn't look very aesthetic, but it works for me. And then whenever I finish a book, I can go in and color code it. So the yellow ones are ones that I've started. Orange is ones where I don't own the sequels yet, but I can change that now because oh no, that one's not come out yet, so I'll leave that as orange. And then obviously all green is where I'm up to date on the series. And then here we have a series that I DNF'd because I hated She Who Became the Sun, so I'm not going to read He Who Drowned the World. Down here I have a tracker for the book club I have with my sibling, but that's not books that we've read because that's on my monthly TBR tracker. That's just books that we both own that can be contenders for the book club. And then last but not least, something completely irrelevant, my previous annual TBR trackers, because one day I would like to finish the books that were on my 23 and 23 and my 24 and 2024. Then the last spreadsheet we're going to look at is the spreadsheet I got from Emma Skies. She's a TikToker. I don't know if she has YouTube. I'll leave a link to her TikTok below, but she makes this spreadsheet freely available, and it's got all the color coding and the automatic graphs and things. So it has much the same information as my other spreadsheet, but I like it, so I carried on using it. This one I don't think I've updated. No, I've not updated this one since the Hating Game. So I've got 2 more books to add to this, but I can also track how many new authors I'm reading. There's subgenres, age ranges I do track. There's color coding for rating, which is more exciting than what I'm capable of in my own spreadsheet. Publication year with a highlight for new releases. Thoughts. I could delete that bit really, but I'm not going to. Format, here I can track multiple formats. So I read She Who Became the Sun as a paperback and an audiobook. So this will have more accurate statistics on my formatting. So it's a bit more in depth. I don't know whether I need all of this information, but it's here. Then we have the graphs, which is the fun bit. The statistics, how many 5-star ratings I've got, and then that graph is over here. That's my breakdown of ratings. Here's the format breakdown with paperback, audiobook, hardcover, and ebook. As you can see, audiobook is definitely my favoured format, but usually in conjunction with another format. This is my breakdown by month. February was my best reading month by a long shot. Most pages, most words, even though not all the words are added to the graph, and the most books. Don't ask me how I managed that. I have no idea. Age range, we have predominantly adult books with a surprisingly large chunk for young adult because of all my rereads. New releases, I read 21% new releases, which is good and bad. I suppose a lot of these statistics aren't good or bad, they're just statistics, but it's nice that 78% of what I'm reading isn't new releases, which is generally reading books from my physical TBR. There's the reread statistic. 31% of the books I've read this year have been rereads, and I've had a wonderful time, honestly. Series or standalone, 68% series. I read a lot of fantasy. Well, I have read a lot of fantasy this year, and there's not actually that many fantasy standalones. So there's that. Series continued or started. Oh, my started is slightly higher than my continued. Then Did I Cry is the most boring graph because I don't really cry at books. BIPOC authors is embarrassingly low. Author gender, predominantly female, always. And then queer characters, relatively 50-50 for having queer features in the books I'm reading. There's the genre breakdown. Again, predominantly fantasy, followed by romance, with sci-fi and fiction also there. Oh no, these are the sub-genres. Right, so this pie chart thing is the predominant genres, and then the secondary genres are here, which is why we have comedy and sports and urban. So they're 2 different primary genre, secondary genre. And then over here we have books acquired from TBR tracker. I'm not very good at updating this, but But yeah, there's the TBR count on March 31st, 445, 6 more than the beginning of the year. Not terrible, I'm not disappointed with that. Monthly stats. In January, my highest rated was my reread of Maximum Ride. Lowest rated was She Who Became the Sun. And those are the stats. In February, because I read so many books, I had 3 5-star books and 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 3-star books. But then my average rating was still 3.95, so pretty good. And those are the stats for that. March, I only read 3 books, so the highest rated was Fangirl, the lowest rated was Oathbound, but again, that was 4 stars. Series tracker. Oh yeah, this is a simplified series tracker based on series started, series continued, and series finished. And then this is my favourites page, so a bunch of categories that I will continue to add to throughout the year, and that's that. And then I have a pre-order tracker here as well, which says the exact same information as the one on my other spreadsheet. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording because I've been screen recording for nearly 40 minutes. So the only other thing I was going to mention in this video is my top 3 books and my bottom 3 books from the first quarter. I've kind of already mentioned, I'll start with the bottom 3 because I'd rather end on a positive note. I've mentioned 2 of these already. We have She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan, which I just thought was awful. Then we have Spiral, which is book 2 in the Off the Ice series by Val Cabra, and it was a very average romance. Really didn't enjoy that one. Won't be reading any more from that series. And then The Churchill Factor by Boris Johnson, which explains itself. So more excitingly, we get to the top 3 books from the first quarter. We'll go from 3 to 1. In third place, we have Onyx Storm. I rated this 4.5. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed rereading the Empyrean series leading up to the release of Onyx Storm. It was just brilliant. I think I've accepted that the series isn't groundbreaking particularly. The writing isn't spectacular. It's just a fun time. It's a fun time with dragons. Then in number 2, we have Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson, which I rated 5 stars. I loved it. I just thought it was so much fun to read an urban fantasy that was still kind of small town, and it just really focused on these female friendships, and I loved that it was about these female friendships that were formed in childhood and kind of formed based on mutually experienced trauma, but it really acknowledges that the women know that they wouldn't be friends if they met now. And some of them are friends because they feel they have to be. And yeah, it was just really fascinating as a character study, as well as actually having a plot. And the ending, I still think about the ending. I really need to get a book 2 because Then in first place, I didn't really want to include a reread on this list, but I mean, I showed you my 5-star list out of the, 5 or 6 books I've rated 5 stars this year. Her Majesty's Royal Coven is the only new read on there. So I have to pick Fangirl. I reread Fangirl and it just re-cemented itself as my favourite book of all time. That I'm pretty sure Rainbow Rowell wrote that book about me, and it's really reassuring actually that I wasn't the only lonely teenage girl who lent on a fanfiction community to feel a sense of community and friendship. And I just love it. I love that book so much. Just obsessed. So I had to put it in the number 1 spot. So those are all of my quarter 1 stats. I've been talking for so long and I have no idea how I'm going to cut this video down. So I'll end it there. Thank you so much for watching. If you have watched this whole video, please leave this emoji in the comments and I will really appreciate you for watching everything that I've been yapping about for the last however many minutes. Thank you so much. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're reading a great book, and I'll see you next time for another bookish video. Bye!